So in embarking on this journey with WGI, obviously you talked about how it was more sustainable for you as far as harmonizing with your family life, but it's a different role, right? Um, as far as like really stepping in, and then I think it was in like '99 where you became director of percussion, right, for WGI. Um, how what was your you know, I don't know if you want to call it like mindset, but or game plan or vision for how you were going to be doing that job, especially in those formative years for WGI. Can you talk about doing that, especially like versus what you had done for the Crossmen? You know, it's two very different kinds of jobs.
If I did have anything that I felt uncomfortable about after leaving my time in DCI, it was that I felt that the system was a little bit broken and that on any given day, you can't be champion. And there were times when I watched it happen and I felt uncomfortable with it. There were times when I would tell the drum line, I know that we just beat everyone in Allentown this weekend, but next week when the Corps is eighth, we're going to be fifth in drums and we're going to get an 8-9 and and on the field. And this is how it's going to work. And it would always happen. And I felt uncomfortable that the system didn't allow anyone, to be champion on any given night. And not that we should have been champion, but I just felt like it wasn't always fair. And it was a system problem. So I always thought that if I ever had the chance to impact more than just my 35 kids, I would take that opportunity and there would be a few things that I would take with me. And one of them that I brought to WGI was on any given day, anybody can be champion. And I drill that with the adjudicators every single time we meet. And there are times when we watch groups perform at WGI events where the rabbit just comes out of the hat and magic happens. And most of the time, those groups get rewarded for it. So that was super important for me. And so that's one of the things that I always take with me. I always wanted there to be a level playing field. I always wanted to make sure that the instructors feel like they can do whatever they want. So if a guy comes out of VK and he wants to do a fun show and he wants to bring that into Dayton, and as long as it's great, it's going to get rewarded. You don't have to do anything that's in a formula to be successful in WGI. So some of the things that weren't so popular with me in drum corps, I wanted to make sure that would not happen to these kids in indoor. And we were so fresh that we didn't have to worry about changing something that was already there. So it was a perfect opportunity to jump in and doing that. I think with my experience, that helped, because if I had been super successful and always won everything all the time, I don't know if I would have looked at it like that.
Who guides the change in WGI as far as what instrumentation is going to be legal, what what kind of visual stuff is going to be allowed?
What's going to be on the sheets?
Yeah,
like how our score is going to be weighted.
Exactly.
Like we obviously these days we know about the advisory board meetings and all of that stuff, but has that always been in place? Like back in those early years, what determined all of that?
Yeah, it's the same now as it was years ago. It's all decided by the instructors. So they decide what they want to happen. We have a steering committee, which is a smaller group that fine tunes those changes, and then we implement them and make sure that they happen for them.
Throughout the years, you've been with WGI over 20 years now. What times, or can you remember any specific time or shows that you could see the activity changing as far as indoor? What sticks out in your head? Any particular years or shows stick out in your head?
Yeah, I'm probably going to get this year wrong, but it was probably around 2005 or 6 where our independent world class all of a sudden arrived. And I remember the prior years where they were the orchestration and the creativity has always been off the charts, but we could never play with the consistency of what we'd see in DCI because they're only playing on the weekends. It's kind of like a DCA schedule. These kids come in, they play on Friday night, Saturday, and they do a show, and then they go home and go back to school and that kind of a thing. So they don't have the hours that the drum corps kids have. And we never played at that level. Played great stuff, just could never play at that level. Well, I think it was 2006, actually. And I remember the 5th place group coming on, and North Coast Academy came on, and they just were insanely good. And I had said to a couple people that I was sitting with, this is interesting now because that's one of the best performances that I had seen a independent world-class group play. And they played with consistency. And then each group just got better and better and better. And when you think about all 15 ensembles that night, you say, this is now a turning point for indoor percussion because we figured out a way to play the vocabulary that we're playing with, which again was a whole separate issue, not issue, but discussion. But we played with incredible quality and clarity. And that's when I knew that we have arrived. And then it's just been getting better and better ever since.
Any other, because you have a different perspective on the whole thing, as far as the activity. Were there any other moments in your tenure where you felt like there was a seismic shift, there was a real change in how things were happening? From your perspective, because the fan perspective is very much, you have what you're seeing is coming from a different place. As far as like either creativity design wise or just organizationally with the health of everything that's going on, what are the sort of key moments or key years in your tenure where you feel like you guys took real steps forward?
There's so many that this activity moves so fast, and the vocabulary that the designers are using to create programs. First of all, we're all huge fans of what they do, and they do some incredible stuff. And, I always say you never stop learning, but every single year I just pick more stuff up that it's just, I love. And there's so many of them. It's not just a couple groups. There's just so many groups that play with just incredible quality, and just the creativity is off the hook. And some of these high school programs, you think of these kids as, these kids are 17 years old and younger, and you watch them play, and really? Like, I wish we played like that when we were 21 years old in drum corps. We didn't play anything compared to these kids. So what we're starting to see at the scholastic level, and then certainly the independent groups, is just insane, and it continues to grow all the time. So the biggest thing, again, is just the creativity. It's great, and I believe that the instructors trust that they can choose to do whatever they want. I know that some of them will talk and say, well, I don't know if that'll be competitive, and we were hoping that this year with the pandemic and all this virtual stuff that we did, we had this e-showcase class that people could do whatever they wanted, no rules, from video recording to lighting and staging and all that kind of stuff. And there was some pretty neat stuff out there. And I'm hoping that those concepts that those people used, we can somehow figure out how to get that implemented into our everyday performance.
Yeah. You talk about the high schools that perform at the high level, stuff that I wish I could have done even at age 21. Do you ever feel like, okay, there's a group of schools in the Scholastic World that are always at the top, but then you have some other groups in Scholastic World that just aren't quite there? You ever think that there'll be a time when that maybe another class gets added? So, and you could move some of the higher end open class into that lower end world class. I don't know if that makes any sense to what I'm saying. You understand what I'm saying?
I mean, has it always been 3 divisions? Has it always been A, open?
It's always been 3 levels, A, open, and world. It's all basically defined as basic, intermediate, and advanced skills. And the problem that a lot of people have with the activity is they're always looking at it from the top down. They're always looking at it from the very top of Scholastic World down to 15th place. We look at it like 15th place going up. So when you're 15th place in Scholastic World, you are one of the elite programs in the country, one of the elite percussion programs. Is there going to be some that are even better? Absolutely. That's just the way it is. It's like that in football. It's like that in, any professional sport. But the bottom line is they're still professionals. And, we see that with indoor percussion. Same thing.
So, you talked a little bit about the philosophy of really allowing instructors to feel that freedom of really being able to do whatever they want. But we all know that, do you actually see that in practice, I guess is my question. Because I think, by human nature, people see what's successful, right? And they find, I guess what you could call inspiration in that. So you sort of see, especially now that the indoor activity has a couple decades of history, right? And evolution. You can look and you can almost say that there are certain types of shows, right? And there's shows that are kind of done in the style of, other groups that have done that stuff really well. From your point of view, is that a good like fulfillment of what you're, hoping that designers will do creatively, or would you like it to see? Would you like it to feel a little bit more or a little bit less homogenous as far as like people sort of saying, we're gonna do something in the style of this group and that group. I don't know if you're following what I'm asking, but because obviously it's a big thing for you as far as like people feeling really free creatively and feeling like they can bring whatever they bring themselves, to the floor.
Yeah, and that comes from the designers. So the designers watch the groups and the designers decide, hey, I'm going to do something like that. But from the adjudication standpoint and from a philosophy standpoint, we're always pretty, even keel with you can do anything as long as it's great. We're talking about the considerations and how they work. Look, the bottom line is that whenever you're talking about adjudication, you're talking about somebody's opinion. Like the three of us could sit here and we could pull one consideration out, and then we could watch three groups and we could, all like one better than the other. That's just part of it. I mean, we're talking about somebody's opinion based on the considerations that we're asking them to evaluate. And everyone has different personal experiences that are going to influence them one way or the other. And we can't change that. And we don't ask the judges to take their personal experiences out of it. Because if we do, they're not going to sit and actually judge those considerations properly. They're going to try to manufacture something. And once you try to manufacture something, you're not going to get a true read. And, when we get to World Championship, we double panel everything. And we have 2 music judges, 2 effect judges, 2 visual judges, 2 effect visual judges. But we try purposely to make them be as opposite as possible with their backgrounds and with their interpretation. So I know that you guys look at things exactly the same way. Guess what? You're never going to be on the same panel because we don't want that. So we get criticized because people will say, well, look at these ordinals. I have 15th and a third neck. Well, yeah, it's the 6 in the middle that is the best thing. We feel as though by having the diversity of people on the panels, we know that we're doing the best for all the groups that are participating in that event rather than just, kind of steering it towards one way.
Right. And obviously you guys meet every year to make sure that you feel like we're doing this right. Like in all the instructors, bringing up their various issues and debating it, having a very healthy debate about all that stuff in the room. Do you feel like, I imagine you probably feel like the state of how things are adjudicated in the activity right now are healthy. But it's gone through many changes, I imagine, over the years. do you feel like, I don't know if fair is the right word, but um, are there considerations that, where there's room, or is everything, or do you feel like everything that should be considered is being considered with the weight that it should be considered?
I'll tell you that I don't think the system will ever be perfect. We will never stop working to try to make it as perfect as we can, but it's a constantly changing and evolving activity. And if we as adjudicators start to dig our heels in and say, this is what's going to be successful, we are going to stop the growth of the activity. And nobody wants to do that. We see groups come out, we saw Broken City come out a couple years ago and do a very different show compared to everyone else. I've never heard the arena so quiet because they demanded it. They demanded your attention, and they were they were best group that night, and there were some insane performances. And to see that kind of diversity throughout the night is the most important thing for a lot of us. Is we don't want anyone to feel like, well, I'm going to have to do the show like Rhythm X does because they won last year. And right now, I feel like that the instructors trust that they can do whatever they want, and it's up to us to make sure that they always feel that way.
Yeah, and I will say that like I got involved in the indoor activity right when Pulse basically came on the scene and really emerged as a title contender. Obviously, you talked about Broken City. I will say recently, I loved, I felt like George Mason came into their own. Like they did something where they just, said, here we are. And it felt different and it was fresh and they were rewarded for it. And like that type of thing for me is very exciting. I find, I don't want it to be homogenous. I really want people to feel like basically to figure out how can I get what's in my head out on the floor and make it successful, so that we can see it, so that it can live. So I really appreciate that philosophy, and that WGI is basically a space for that to happen. Something I wanted to ask you about was, have you noticed the impact the indoor activity has had on drum corps over the years?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. There was a time, I'm not gonna get my dates right, but there was a time when I thought drum corps was, everything was very unison block oriented, and I don't think the orchestration was all that diverse. And we started playing all this different stuff with the vocabulary. You started to see these different hybrid ideas come into play, and the musicianship, and the fact that things down low can be so different because we're inside and you're close to it. You're not that, drum corps, you get far away. But all of a sudden, when that influence started to go outside, it took drum corps and made that better as well. So I think that there's things that we learn from each other. We've learned the consistency of drum corps to play indoors. We've now taken the vocabulary that we've developed and evolved in indoor and taken it back outside. And it's fresh. It's fresh for all the activities to learn from each other and continue to move forward.
Yeah, I love it for sure. But, yeah, and we always joke and laugh. It's some people will be like, WGI doesn't belong in drum corps. But no, I love the creativity when it kind of leaks over. And people got to remember, these instructors, they live in the same world. They live in the WGI, DC. It all goes, kind of hand in hand.
But, but also the kids, are bringing the indoor skill set outdoors. Like a lot of times, I would hear from visual instructors that all of a sudden, the percussion section was really, really, they would come to move-ins and drum corps really the strongest, and best prepared, best trained visually, for that. And the environments that they play in indoors are much more demanding. So then, what you can do outdoors, opens up a little more. So it's definitely, I think it's been great how skill set wise and creatively, both forms have helped each other grow.
Yeah, I had another thing. I had a discussion with some drum corps people several years ago at Dayton. They said, we don't really want to meet with you because we have to figure out a way to change the schedule so these kids can get to camp. And I said to him, I said, look, we don't make the schedule. That's up to the ensembles. I mean, our shows are all over the country, different weekends. It's not like we're running a show in everybody's hometown every single weekend. So it's up to the ensembles to figure out if they got a bunch of kids in drum corps XYZ that they figure out how to make that happen. But later on, it became very obvious that they didn't have to have a drum corps camp every other weekend because these kids were coming to rehearse. When they did come to move in, they were in shape, ready to go. And it's better if they could just, hey, let's use the technology, make sure the kids are learning the music, and then we'll see them in, end of April. And it has worked out. It was a little bumpy there for a while. We were, bumping heads, but we were just trying to get everybody to understand that we're actually helping each other. We're not hurting each other. We're not trying to have kids choose. We want kids to be able to do everything if they can.
100%. And you still, you still have every year you can count on, drum corps auditions messing with like indoor rehearsals and all of that stuff. But I think what's nice is we're all part of the same community. Like everybody knows each other. I mean, there's so much cross-pollination as far as instructors and stuff. So we always work it out. But other than, adding months to the year, it's going to be tough to not have there be some overlap.